Hello and welcome back to my channel, and today I thought I'd do something a bit different, a theatre review, because I've just been to see the new revival at the Harold Pinter Theatre in London of The Weir. Now The Weir is a play by the Irish writer Conor McPherson, and I was lucky enough to see the original production at the Royal Court upstairs back in about 1997, I think it was. And I can honestly say that I think that is still my favourite theatrical experience ever. Honestly, I saw a lot of theatre at that time in London, but that one stays in my mind. It was fantastic. I had no idea about the play. It was a brand new play. I didn't know what was coming up, didn't know what to expect. And I was so taken by this incredible story. These people in an Irish bar one night, they start telling each other ghost stories, and the ghost stories start getting more and darker and interlocking. And then it's about these four guys trying to impress this young woman who's come up from Dublin to buy a house. And then she turns the tables on them. She tells them a ghost story that is so much more powerful and haunting than theirs. And what struck me about it, right, was, I don't know if anyone went to that original production, but it was in a very small space, the Royal Court upstairs, and you were on the same level. Everyone was on the level of the bar. So the bar set was sort of rectangular, and there were wooden chairs placed around it, so you felt you were in the bar. It was incredibly intimate. You were very intimate with the actors, very close to them. And also, my memory is this, right? They had a peat fire going, and it was right next to me where I was sitting. And I don't know if this is my imagination, but I could smell the peat. And that might have been something, I was so caught up in it that I was actually imagining it, but that's how it felt. And that first production, I don't think any production will ever beat it. I've since seen the Donmar Warehouse revival with Brian Cox, with Ardlo Hanlon and Dervla Kirwan in the cast. And now I've seen the new Brandan Gleeson production. I think I've seen another production somewhere in between that, but I can't seem to find any memory or record of it, so perhaps I'm imagining it. But that first production was extraordinary, and it's become the template for the play in my mind. In the play, there's 5 characters. So it starts with this old guy walking into a pub, and he can't get the taps to work. In the original play, now they've slightly changed that. The taps are sort of belching out stuff. But anyway, so he walks in, and the pub is empty. Eventually, the landlord comes in. They start chatting. Then another friend comes in, Jim, and they start chatting about everyday stuff, kind of boring old men's conversation. And then one guy who used to be at the village comes in. He's now a bit of a man about town. He's a bit of a businessman, fancies himself a bit. And he's brought a young woman up from Dublin. She's looking to buy a property. And he's kind of showing off to her and showing the sights. And now here's a local bar. And to entertain her, they start telling her ghost stories. So that's the premise of the play. The main character is the old guy who comes in the bar at the beginning. Right, and he's someone who's lived all his life in this village, and there's a sense that he's kind of wasted his life. He's been trapped, right? In the original production, he was played by Jim Norton, and you may know Jim Norton best as Bishop Brennan from Father Ted. Crilly, you kicked me up the arse, Crilly. You know, that guy. But he's actually a very distinguished actor in Ireland, and he's been in lots of things. He turns up actually in Sam Peckinpah's Straw Dogs, and he was absolutely brilliant in the main part, Jack. I still can't quite get his performance out of my mind. And what was interesting watching the Brandan Gleeson role is this. Jim Norton was very lively, he was very puckish, and he tells his story with a lot of humour. And he's the lively guy, the others are a bit dull, right? I mean, the barman, for example, in the original production was very quietly spoken young man, a strong silent type. Jim was a kind of weaker character. He was a bit sort of socially awkward. And in the first production, Finbar, the businessman, he quite fancied himself a bit and held himself back. So Jim Norton came forward and was quite fun. In the second production I saw, the Brian Cox was the same. He was the energy. He's the person who gets the thing going. What's interesting about the new Harold Pinter Theatre production with Brandan Gleeson is Brandan Gleeson, the big star, he's playing Jack. and he's very subdued. He almost underplays it. And instead, Finbar, the businessman character, he becomes the lively character. He's played by an actor called, I will look him up just now, Tom Vaughan Lawler. Now, I've seen Tom Vaughan Lawler in films and television. I saw him in the film Baltimore, a recent Irish production, very good film. And he's an excellent actor. But in this production, right, he's really over the top. He's really going for the laughs. He's kind of almost like the comic relief character, which completely explodes the whole way I see the play. I see Jack as this local character with his story about the fairy road and the old days, and he's the person you're warm to. And Finbar is this rather sort of clipped, guy who's gone to the city and become a bit of a businessman and fancies himself. But in this production, the new production with Brandan Gleeson, it's been turned round. So now Jack is an understated, rather sad, rather boring old man, really. And Tom Vaughan Lawler's character, Finbar, is jumping around and he's doing high kicks and all this sort of stuff. And it unsettled me. I couldn't quite enjoy the play. And what I found was that this production, the new production, is actually directed by Conor McPherson himself. So was this closer to Conor McPherson's idea of the play, and the original production was somewhat different from how he'd written it? I don't know. It sort of bothered me. It bothered me so much that when I came back home, I actually got the book out and read through the play because I felt it had been rewritten. It was slightly rewritten to change certain details, mostly to do with how a pub works, and so that the actors weren't drinking all the way through the production. But essentially the play is the same as it was performed back in 1997. But I was so surprised by that change in direction of the actors. It caught me off guard. So the first production, I realise now, was much more subdued. It was much more intimate, perhaps because of the space in which it was in. Perhaps Conor McPherson, with the bigger space of the Harold Pinter Theatre, felt it had to project outwards and have more energy. I don't know. But it's really interesting. The part played by the woman, Valerie, I don't think any actress could mess that up. So in the original, it was played by a lady called Julia Ford. Dervla Kirwan was excellent opposite Brian Cox. And this time around, the actress playing it is Kate Phillips, who I wasn't familiar with, but she's excellent. It's a part that you can own, really. The female character in the play barely says a word for about the first 2/3 of the play, then she totally dominates it. It's quite good fun. The other thing that sort of unsettled me a bit is, back in that first production in the Royal Court, Brendan, who is the barman, was played by a very subdued actor. He was almost like a sort of straight man to everyone else's characters. But in the recent productions which I've seen, both at the Donmar Warehouse and the Harold Pinter Theatre, Brendan comes forward as quite a sort of gregarious, rather foul-mouthed publican. And I don't know, again, that's sort of thrown my whole sense of the play in a way. But maybe, I should just go with the different approaches and different readings of it. I find this play absolutely fascinating. I love it because I'm a lover of ghost stories. I love that the ghost stories are well told, they're well thought through, and they build in power. And they also link up so that, there's this idea that the first one seems like a gentle tale of Irish folk stories, doesn't it? The fairy people. But you get that little detail of the knock on the door is lower than it would be for an adult. It's a child. And then you remember that. And then the second story is about a man who doesn't believe in ghosts, but then he has this fear that there's this woman watching him from the stairs. That actually the spirit world can actually invade his world as well. And then the third story, that horrible third story of the pervert who wants to be buried in the same ground as this young child who's died. And of course all of this is interlocking with the main story from the woman, that she has lost her child, but she gets this phone call saying, Mummy, help me, there's a man across the street, and she can't go and help her. And it's brilliantly done. You don't see it coming. It's all interwoven with chat and drinking, but it's building all the time. And then you get the final story whenever two of the other guys have gone home, and Jack tells her his story about how he is a ghost. How he's ruined his life and he's ended up a ghost in his own world. It's a fantastic play. I absolutely love it. So even though I have some sort of differences with the current production with Brandan Gleeson, I would still wholeheartedly recommend it. If you've never seen The Weir performed at a theatre, it is a fantastic experience, a really amazing night out.